The modern man is not lost because he is weak. He is lost because his mind is drowning in constant noise. Every morning he wakes up already tired, not from work, not from life, but from the invisible pressure pulling his brain in 100 directions before he even gets out of bed. He checks his phone without thinking, scrolls without intention, and searches for tiny hits of pleasure that disappear the moment they arrive. This isn't a lack of discipline, it's overstimulation. It's the result of living in a world that gives your brain more dopamine in one morning than your ancestors received in an entire week. No man was built to handle that, and yet every man is expected to stay focused, stay strong, and stay productive, even quando sua mente está sendo bombardeada o tempo inteiro. He feels broken, but he's not broken. He's overloaded. People call this normal life, but nothing about it is normal. It is not normal to feel anxious in silence. It is not normal to be unable to sit still for 5 minutes without reaching for a screen. It is not normal to lose your ability to think deeply because your attention was sliced into fragments by constant stimulation. This is the new battlefield, and most men step into it without training, without guidance, and without understanding the enemy. The modern man is not lazy. He has simply forgotten how to focus. He is not undisciplined. His mind has been hijacked. He is not empty because he lacks meaning. He is empty because he is full of too much noise, too much distraction, too much artificial pleasure. In the past, a warrior needed a clear mind, steady presence, and a code to follow. Today, the modern man needs exactly the same things, but nobody taught him how to use them. Nobody told him that a brain flooded with tiny rewards becomes weak. Nobody told him that real discipline isn't about force, it's about clarity. So he moves through life like a modern Ronin, a warrior without a master. A man who tries to fight but doesn't know what he's fighting. A man who feels like something is missing but can't identify what it is. At night, when everything finally gets quiet, he feels it the most. That heaviness, that fog, that silent exhaustion that doesn't come from the body, but from the mind. Maybe you felt this too. Maybe you've tried to focus and failed. Maybe you've promised yourself you would change and couldn't keep the promise. Maybe you wonder why your mind keeps dragging you away from what matters. And the truth is simple. Your mind is not the enemy. The world you're living in is a world filled with endless stimulation, a world designed to keep you distracted, tired, and easy to control. But here is the part they never tell you. You do not need impossible strength. You do not need to transform everything at once. You only need to take back one thing, the thing you lost without noticing: control of your attention. When you regain that, everything else begins to come back. Most men don't realize how much control they've lost. They think checking their phone every few minutes is harmless, but it's not. Every time you reach for your device without intention, you are teaching your brain that discomfort must be avoided and that stimulation must be immediate. You're training your mind to run away from silence, from boredom, from effort. And slowly, without noticing, you lose the ability to stay with your own thoughts. The modern world doesn't need to break your body to defeat you. It just needs to keep your mind constantly distracted. When your attention becomes weak, your actions become weak. When your actions are weak, your identity follows. And this is how strong men turn into passive observers of their own lives. It doesn't happen in one day. It happens in hundreds of small moments. The morning when you wake up and the first thing you touch is your phone, not your breath. The night when you tell yourself you'll sleep early but end up scrolling for an hour. The afternoon when you plan to focus but 5 minutes later you're checking notifications you already knew you didn't need. These tiny behaviors seem small, but they rewire your brain. They create a mind that cannot handle discomfort, a mind that chases stimulation, a mind that avoids anything that feels slow or difficult. And a man with a mind like that can't build discipline, can't build consistency, can't build purpose. He becomes trapped in a loop he didn't choose. The worst part is that the modern man blames himself. He thinks he's lazy. He thinks he has no willpower. He thinks other men are stronger, smarter, more disciplined, and that he simply wasn't born with the same strength. But that is a lie. Most men today are not weak, they are overstimulated. Most men are not undisciplined. They are drowning in a world designed to steal their focus. And because no one explained this, they carry shame that doesn't belong to them. They think they're failing, when in reality, they are fighting a battle with no training and no tools. This is why so many men feel like Ronins, warriors who lost their master. Not a master in the literal sense, but a sense of direction, a code, a structure, a way of living that keeps the mind steady in a world full of noise. When you don't have a code, everything feels harder. Every day becomes a negotiation with your own impulses. Every task becomes a fight against distraction. And the more you lose, the more you begin to believe that this is just who you are. But that belief is the real enemy. Because once you think you're broken, you stop trying to rise. Yet something inside you still wants to rise, something small, but real. A tiny voice that says, there has to be more than this. That voice is not weakness, it is the last sign of your original strength. And if you follow it even for a moment, you begin to realize that your life isn't ruined. It's just buried under layers of noise, and noise can be removed. If you're enjoying the video, please leave a like. It helps us deliver our content to other people. There is a moment in every man's life when he finally notices what the noise has done to him. Maybe it happens late at night when the world is quiet, and he realizes he can't remember the last time he felt truly present. Maybe it happens when he tries to read a single page, and his mind jumps away after 10 seconds. Or maybe it hits him when he looks around his room, his job, his relationships, and sees how much he has been living on autopilot. This moment is uncomfortable, almost painful. But it is also the beginning of clarity. Because before a man can rebuild his mind, he needs to understand what broke it. The modern world didn't destroy men with big tragedies. It destroyed them with small, constant rewards. Every swipe, every click, every notification is a microdose of dopamine that trains the mind to crave stimulation instead of a purpose. Over time, this changes the brain. Tasks that require effort start to feel impossible. Moments of silence feel threatening. Discipline starts to feel like a punishment. And life begins to feel empty, not because it lacks meaning, but porque o cérebro já não consegue percebê-lo. A mind addicted to stimulation loses the ability to feel depth. Depth requires slowness, depth requires presence, depth requires patience. And these are the exact things the modern environment steals from you. This is why so many men feel lost without understanding why. They have goals, dreams, responsibilities, but their mind keeps resisting anything that doesn't give them instant pleasure. It's not that they don't want to improve, é que o cérebro deles foi treinado para rejeitar tudo que parece lento. That's why trying to change your life overnight never works. Your brain isn't built to handle drastic transformation after years of overstimulation. You don't fix a mind that has been overwhelmed with noise by adding more pressure. You fix it by learning to quiet the noise. And this is the part most men never hear. Discipline is not the first step. Silence is. Before you create routines, habits, systems, you must learn to sit with your own mind again. Not for long, not in a dramatic way. Just a few minutes where you stop trying to escape yourself. It feels uncomfortable at first because discomfort is the withdrawal of overstimulation, but it also feels honest. It feels like wiping fog off a mirror after ano sem ver o próprio rosto. This is the essence of the modern Ronin. A man who has been living without a master, without a guiding voice, without a clear sense of direction. Not because he is weak, but because he has been surrounded by too much noise to hear his own thoughts. The Ronin doesn't need a master. He needs clarity. And clarity begins in the quiet moments he has been avoiding his entire life. When a man allows himself these first moments of silence, something begins to shift. He starts noticing how tired he really is, how distracted he has been, how much time ele perdeu sem perceber. But he also notices something else, something small, but powerful. He notices that his mind, por mais quebrada que pareça, ainda responde ao silêncio. Ainda sabe como voltar. Ainda quer voltar. And that is the first sign that the warrior inside him is not gone. He is just waiting for space to breathe. Once a man experiences even a small moment of silence, he begins to notice something important. The world has been moving too fast for too long, and he has been trying to keep up with it instead of choosing his own pace. This realization is uncomfortable, but it opens the door to something powerful: awareness. And awareness is the first tool of a warrior. A man cannot fight an enemy he cannot see, and until now, his enemy was hidden in plain sight. It was hidden in his habits, his routines, the apps on his phone, the constant pressure to stay connected, and the belief that overstimulation was simply part of modern life. But when the noise quiets, even for a moment, he sees the truth. He has been living in a system designed to weaken his focus. When a man understands this, he stops blaming himself. He begins to understand that his brain wasn't broken. It was simply reacting to an environment that overwhelms everyone. And this is where the path of the modern Ronin truly begins. Not with guilt, not with shame, but with understanding. A Ronin does not judge himself for being lost. He studies the path that made him lost. He observes his triggers, his impulses, his automatic behaviors. He starts to see the patterns that control him. And once he sees the patterns, he can break them. Awareness is the first cut of the sword. This is where the man begins to rebuild, not through intensity, but through small, clear steps. The first step is learning to reduce the noise, not to eliminate everything at once, but to make space. Real transformation begins with subtraction, not addition. He removes one habit that drains him. He takes back one moment of stillness. He chooses one action to replace overstimulation. And he keeps it small, because small is sustainable. A man doesn't need to destroy his entire routine. He needs to weaken the hold that overstimulation has on him. One intentional action each day is enough to start shifting the mind that has been numb for years. The next step is presence. This doesn't mean meditating for hours or trying to empty the mind. It means doing simple things with full attention, drinking water with intention, feeling the air when he walks outside, noticing his breath before checking his phone. Presence is not a spiritual idea. Presence is training. Training the mind to return to the moment instead of chasing stimulation. It is the modern version of what warriors did for centuries. Before a sword was lifted, the mind was sharpened. Before a battle was faced, the breath was controlled. Before direction was taken, silence was honored. The modern Ronin does the same, not with ancient rituals, but with everyday moments. And then comes the most important part: direction. A man cannot walk without a path. In the past, the Ronin lost his master, but what he truly lost was his direction, his reason to move forward. Modern men lose direction too, não porque não têm sonhos, mas porque seus sonhos foram empurrados para o fundo da mente por distrações constantes. Regaining direction doesn't require massive goals. It requires clarity. One simple purpose, one reason to get up, one thing that reminds him who he wants to become. With silence, awareness, presence, and direction, the modern Ronin begins to feel something he hasn't sentido en manos: control. Not control over the world, but control over himself. And for a man who has been drowning in noise, this is the beginning of freedom. When a man finally begins to regain control, something subtle but powerful starts to happen inside him. His mind, once scattered and restless, begins to show signs of strength again. He starts to realize that discipline is not a force he applies to himself. It is a byproduct of clarity. When a man knows where he is going, he naturally becomes more disciplined. When he understands his own patterns, he stops falling into the same traps. And when he takes small, consistent steps, he discovers something most men forget. Momentum is stronger than motivation. Motivation fades, momentum grows, and even the smallest positive action done daily builds a level of confidence that overstimulation had stolen from him for years. This is when the modern Ronin begins to rebuild his identity. Not through grand achievements, but through consistency. He starts with simple principles, reducing stimulants that drain him, increasing actions that strengthen him, and removing the guilt that kept him stuck. He stops viewing himself as a failure and begins to see himself as a man who was stuck in a toxic environment and who is now choosing to rise above it. Identity is built through repetition, and every time he chooses silence over noise, presence over distraction, and intention over impulse, he is slowly shaping a new version of himself, a version that he actually respects. With identity comes resilience. The modern Ronin understands that he will still face bad days. There will be moments when he slips back into old habits, when overstimulation tries to reclaim him, when the noise gets louder than expected. But he no longer confuses a setback with failure. He knows that a stumble is not a collapse. He knows that one bad day does not erase weeks of progress. He knows that the path is not perfect and doesn't need to be. Real strength is not in never falling. It's in rising every time he does. And with this mindset, he becomes impossible to break. At this stage, something deeper begins to awaken inside him. Purpose. Not a dramatic or romantic purpose, but a practical one. He begins to feel responsible for his own life again. He takes ownership of his actions. He stops waiting for motivation and starts acting because he understands that action creates the energy he needs. He no longer seeks instant pleasure, he seeks long-term meaning. And as he rebuilds this internal structure, he realizes that the world hasn't become easier. The difference is that he has become stronger. This new strength affects every area of his life. He becomes more present with the people he loves. He becomes more focused in his work. He becomes more aware of what truly matters. And slowly, the fog that once covered his mind begins to lift. He sees his path more clearly. He understands himself more deeply. He moves with intention instead of impulse. He thinks before reacting. He chooses before drifting. And he becomes the kind of man who influences others without even trying, because strength is silent and presence is powerful. In the end, the journey of the modern Ronin is not about perfection. It is about reclaiming what overstimulation stole from him: his focus, his peace, his purpose, and his identity. And if you have listened this far, it means that some part of you is ready to start your own journey too. Not tomorrow, not next week, but today. Your first step does not need to be big. It just needs to be real. Choose one small action, one moment of silence, one moment of presence. Begin there. Because the path of the modern Ronin does not start with strength. It starts with awareness. And once a man becomes aware, nothing can stop him from rising. If this message spoke to you, subscribe, leave a comment, and like the video. Your support helps this community grow, and the next video continues your path.